I'd now like to invite Professor Corinne Mulley to come and talk to us about exactly that, to provide a case study, a transport case study, which is looking at ways to estimate the financial benefits that might actually accrue from active travel. And as we know, there's all sorts of different ways of different outcomes, different co-benefits, and if we can value it in a financial sense, then it may be a little bit more competitive with road transport projects and things like that. So Professor Mulley is the founding chair in public transport in the Institute of Transport and Logistics Studies at the University of Sydney. As a transport economist, she has actually researched and published at the interface of transport policy and economics, in particular on issues relating to public transport. Since coming to Sydney, Corinne has been involved with state government on the development of transport plans and other studies, independent regulators, local government, community transport organisations and community groups. So Corinne, let's hear about the monetisation of active travel.
In fact, Chris has preempted a bit about what I was going to talk about. My intention is to concentrate less on the intrinsic detail of what is available in the public domain, but to actually try and put it a bit more in context. My arm, I think, is going to get a bit longer by the time I've finished in 10 minutes. So I'm briefly going to cover these 5 areas, but I think it's important, given the debate that people have raised here about why isn't the impact of health more captured in the evaluation guidelines, to say really transport isn't as far behind as we might think, although there's a long way to go. And in particular, the awareness of the connections between health and transport is not new. We forget that safety has been a preoccupation of transport professionals for a long time and has been well embedded in the evaluation procedures. Transport emissions have also been of great concern, particularly in terms of the health impact, and the relationship to public health concerns has been something which has been from the 1950s. Having said that, the health impacts of sedentary behaviour is an area of growing concern worldwide and is not well captured in terms of the evaluation procedures. It's couched against a background of a decline in more active transport modes, which Karen highlighted for us, and also the negative impacts of driving arising from the sedentary nature of this, which is being highlighted in the research literature actually for some time, but it's coming to the forefront now. In terms of what constitutes active travel, this is not really designed to teach grandmothers how to suck eggs, which is an English expression, but the point that I want to emphasise is that public transport use is often forgotten as a contributor to active travel because of the way in which people use active travel as a means of access and egress. This has been said already today, so I'm not going to labour the point, but I wanted to raise the fact that this is often forgotten. I seem to have lost the slide. Oh, this is the one that I've jumped out of order. My apologies. It's important background to what I want to finish off by talking about is that the new physical activity guidelines for health identify a greater need for physical activity. And one of the issues that transport professionals notice is that car travel in particular works against meeting these physical activity guidelines. And the fact that we're seeing worldwide, and particularly in developed countries, an increasing travel of car just exacerbates that effect. So the policy approaches are actually three-pronged. They're designed to reduce the harms of driving, reduce the daily travel by car, and to increase the active travel modes. And if we don't look at policies that look at those three, we'll be missing the potential benefits to health. The other thing that this slide highlights is that the benefits of healthier travel are often couched only in terms of the benefits to society, how society will end up spending less money on health. We mustn't forget that it's actually a win-win. Individuals that are healthier will actually benefit themselves. So it's these two aspects that mustn't be forgotten. In terms of increasing active modes, they form into two types of policy. One, the soft policies, which are driven by carrots and sticks, reducing travel by imposing costs on car users in particular, or carrots by making it easier for people to involve themselves in active travel. The second main area is through building infrastructure which makes active travel more amenable. And one of the things that I'd like to contribute later on is to say that we think often in New South Wales that infrastructure is the only solution. I think there's a lot we can do with what we already have. With that background, justifying the infrastructure solutions is somewhat more tricky when you look at the health contributions than it has been in terms of safety and emissions. But justifying the health benefits in evaluation is beginning its journey in much the same way as the safety people and the emissions people have been doing for 20 or 30 years. There's a lot more writing on this slide for very good reason, because I wanted to identify some of the issues that we've been facing in trying to make this important. In particular, in looking at the costs and the benefits, what you find is that the current guidelines, which determine how transport schemes, from my perspective, but all infrastructure, is evaluated, capture the health impacts imperfectly. So, for example, if you have a transport scheme that requires people to interchange, the costs, the fact that people don't like interchange, are captured in the evaluation. But the benefits of people walking at interchange, which is a contribution to their physical activity daily measures, is not captured at all. The costs in terms of providing additional active transport infrastructure are well captured in the evaluation, but the benefits are less perfectly captured, partly because it's difficult with a new cycle infrastructure to know how many more people will travel, what sort of infrastructure these different people want, and because that methodological presence isn't yet there, but it's coming, it's been less well captured in the evaluation. So as Chris has said, what we've been working on is providing the evidence base that the revision of the evaluation guidelines must take up now if they're going to keep up with the stages which safety has had to travel and with the stages that emissions have had to travel to get themselves as well established as it is. Evidence is important because evidence base should drive policy. The evaluation procedure compares costs and benefits. And what I've tried to persuade you is that there's better evidence on costs than there is on benefits. And so we need to try and deliver the better evidence on benefits to make, I've just put public transport there, that's my focus, but it's also all active travel infrastructure, including walking spaces as well as cycling. Having better evidence is also the key to making the balance between car-based schemes, which don't take account of drivers' health impacts of sitting behind the driving wheel into account, and making the ability of public transport and active transport schemes more likely to pass the benefit cost threshold. And in particular, one of the things that we've been arguing for in all infrastructure is that instead of saying value active travel infrastructure separately, we've been arguing every infrastructure project that's put forward should include active travel infrastructure unless there's a good reason for it not being so. And actually, it seems to me a no-brainer. Adding on infrastructure for active travel adds very, very little to the total costs of rail projects, of road projects, but the enormous health benefits that can be added to the benefits makes all these schemes so much easier to justify. There's a lot of emerging evidence in the Australian context which has built on, okay, it'll be 2 minutes, has built on the on the worldwide context. And I'd just like to highlight the figures here of what benefits you get in Aussie dollars from a 5% and 10% switch in mode for journeys by walking of less than 1 kilometre. So people walking for 10 minutes or less can generate this sort of level of benefits. In some senses, walking is easier than cycling. And the challenge with cycling has been, how do you calculate a kilometre cost of benefit so that people who are carrying out evaluations can easily include the benefits in their calculation? And this means bringing together evidence from health in terms of changes to risk in lifestyle diseases and matching that with the demand for cycling. And a number of us in this room have co-authored a paper that was put on the alerts today, it's just been published, that contains this evidence and shows how to convert the known health benefits, both direct and indirect, into a kilometre benefit, which you can see at the bottom is between 82 centimetres per kilometre and 1.67. Finally, and I will finish, Rachel, the evaluation guidelines which are under review provide an enormous opportunity to have a win-win for transport and health. We do need more infrastructure because in having more infrastructure does provide more opportunities. But I would also argue that we need to make more use of what we've got, and that will come through collaborating, as Karen keeps on reminding us, between multi-stakeholders and agencies in order to make a difference. In terms of research directions, we need to make sure that now having put some numbers in the field, that we work to refine those and to make them as respectable for evaluation as the value of time is used in terms of valuing time savings. And we are as much at blame in the academic community for our lack of collaboration, but I would like to argue that actually more and more we're talking to each other in different parts of the university, transport, health and planning, and hopefully that research collaboration will also bring benefits to the transport, land use and health debate. Thank you.